there's been criticism in Morocco of the speed of the official response to Friday's earthquake, which is now known to have killed more than 2,800 people. Heavy lifting equipment has begun to arrive in the remote regions of the Atlas Mountains, which has been the hardest hit. Our Middle East correspondent Tom Bateman has filed this update from Marrakesh.
It has been a fourth night out in the open for tens of thousands of people across this region. Where we are now is in Marrakesh, less affected than the high Atlas Mountains where we were making our way yesterday. But even here, there are damaged homes. I was speaking to one woman who said that her house is cracked and badly damaged, and she simply doesn't want to spend another night there for fear of aftershocks, because of course in previous quakes, that's exactly when buildings can come down if they've been damaged by the initial earthquake itself. Now, she said that she's brought her 4 children here, her disabled brother, and they're simply at the moment having to fend for themselves. There was no official aid, there's been no official help for them here, she said. And that is a scene that we're seeing replicated in many parts, particularly across the mountains. And we spent the day there yesterday getting into some of the most remote areas. And while in the big towns, particularly in a place called Asni, we were seeing a military response, we were seeing formal aid, we were seeing that really crucially important heavy equipment, diggers, that you need in the crucial hours and days after an earthquake to lift the rubble. That was starting to be deployed, and we were seeing it in some villages as well. But as soon as you get to those more remote areas, there was absolutely none of that at all. So there have been these growing voices that there wasn't the urgency. It didn't feel for people like there was the urgency with the official response that was critically needed. Now, the Moroccan government says that it has been doing a very quick and rapid response. Its military has been deployed since the earthquake on Friday and into Saturday. But at the moment, there's still only been 4 countries that have had an official request from the Moroccans to come here. They are starting to be deployed. But it still remains the case that in some of those most remote areas, people desperately need more help.
That's Tom Bateman in Marrakesh. MSF Doctors Without Borders have a team in Marrakesh at the moment, and I'm joined now by their emergency coordinator, John Johnson. Thank you very much for joining us, John. Clearly, you've got a huge task ahead of you. Tell us a little bit about the challenges that you're facing.
Well, I guess we were facing the same challenges as everybody else. We arrived here on Saturday night, trying to figure out where the problems are. It's easy to identify the bigger villages that have been hardest hit, and that's where all the responders are going. But like the commentator said earlier, it's the villages that are a little bit harder to identify, that are a bit lost in the mountains, where it's hard to reach, and that's where we're trying to find where we can be of help as well, in the places that are not encore reached by the search and rescue teams.
And what is it that is quite essential in terms of the equipment and help that you need at the moment? We spoke to a charity a little bit earlier on, and they said that in the area that they're working in, they aren't accompanied by any other sort of authority or any other sort of charity groups. It's just them. So it seems like resources are scarce at the moment.
I don't know. I think it depends on where they are and how it's distributed. If you look at the overall response, it's been impressive. There's been a massive response by the Moroccan military. There are ambulances that are driving all around the area around the earthquake to find victims. You see distribution of water, food, and non-food items. People are still sleeping outside, but it depends on where you look. There's been a very strong response in certain areas, and then I think certain areas just haven't been reached yet. And I think a lot of that has to do with the access. We're high up in the mountains. Some of these villages are only reachable by foot or by donkey, so it's hard to get to.
And in terms of the kind of the hospitals and the blood donations, we heard early on when the news of the earthquake first broke that was something that authorities were sort of urging people to do, to donate blood, to go to their local hospitals and help with the search and rescue mission. What's the situation now?
There's been a large outpouring of solidarity from the Moroccan people. You've had blood donations, of course. You've had doctors and nurses from all over the country that have come to the area to help out. of their own goodwill. You see a big response, and places where we arrived, the first night, and there were no human resources to treat the patients. Now there's a system that's been put in place. You have more than enough staff in certain places at the clinics, but there's still a few needs to be reached.
And, we've talked a lot about the scale in terms of the reports that we're getting of the missing people and the people that have sadly lost their lives. We also hear about reports that people are too afraid to stay in their homes and they're worried about tremors that might follow. What are you seeing?
I mean, in the smaller villages that we visited, they've been completely leveled. There's nowhere to stay inside. In some of the bigger villages that have more modern structures, those structures are still cracked and broken and could fall if there is an aftershock, and they'll need to be destroyed. They'll need to be leveled and rebuilt. So I think in a lot of these villages really close to the epicenter, there's not a good choice but to sleep outside, and it's going to take time to rebuild their homes.
And you've presumably dealt with these sort of disasters before in the past and similar situations. How does this compare to other trips that you've made?
But this is certainly the most devastation I've seen in terms of material damage in such a short period of time. At the same time, a lot of deaths, the 2,800 that have been reported so far. And a lot of wounded, but at the same time, as the days go by, the situation in terms of the medical situation gets better and better. And right now, for the moment, the most urgent needs are being reached for the people that they can reach.
Okay. All right. Well, John, thank you very much for joining us. John Johnson there, who's out in Marrakesh, part of the search and rescue mission with Doctors Without Borders.